Turkey-Alishek continues to boop, 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 doot, 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 fire shots at Canelo Alvarez. Baby, you want, baby, I know that. The beef continues to brew with both men taking their shots and seemingly no man willing to back down from it. So I made a video a couple videos ago, and I was talking about Terence Crawford and his partnership with Turkey-Alishek. I went and did a deep dive. I want you guys to listen to that video. It's 40 minutes long, so I'm going to give you guys the condensed version. Make sure you guys subscribe for long form, shorter form content on my channel. I'm the best in the business, and it's not even close. I give you a little bit of everything. But I want to consolidate it for the people who haven't seen it, maybe new listeners, or in case you didn't have time to listen to that whole video. Basically, the point I was driving home is that Terence Crawford could have stayed and started a partnership with PBC, right? And he had already beaten Errol Spence. To that date, it was probably his highest earning fight where he made the most. Well, actually, it was, because I seen Terence Crawford said this in an interview that it was his biggest paycheck, and he said it was Errol Spence's biggest paycheck, right? And I don't really know how he knows Errol Spence's money, because Errol Spence has also had, you know, other big fights like Mikey Garcia with a lot of people, 40,000 plus people. So he really can only speak for his biggest paycheck. You can't really speak for another man just because of what's disclosed on the commission slips. It said that Terence Crawford at the Crawford-Madrimov, it said he got like $2 million, but we know Crawford made more on that particular card. So you can't always go with that. But the point I was driving home, again, is that Crawford ran to Turkey-Alishek. A lot of people prematurely anointed Turkey-Alishek. Now, you can like what he's doing in Riyadh season. That's no problem. But I feel like we have an insane, it is just insane, recency bias that goes on in the sport of boxing, not just for situations outside of boxing like promoter stuff and politics, but also with fighters. Virgil Ortiz, he got dropped twice, people writing him off saying he sucks. But when he was knocking out Thomas Delorme and he had a 100% knockout ratio, they said something different. You know, Crawford has a tougher than expected fight with Madrimov. People saying, oh, Crawford fell off and blah, blah, blah. So it's just, the recency bias is completely absurd. It's devoid of any type of just realistic thought and long-term thought. It's just so spur of the moment what's happening right now. Now, being that is the case, and with that being said, I think Terence Crawford, he was such in a rush to not do business with PBC long-term that he ran over to Turkey, which to me, it doesn't really make sense. Now you have Turkey who's taking shots at viable options for Crawford, but with what Turkey's saying, now they're not really options because he continues to take shots. The guys I'm referring to are Canelo Alvarez and Tszyu. Turkey has been very vocal, very upfront, and outspoken. And he says, I'm not working with Canelo, and I have no plans to work with Tszyu. They don't get it. You know, they're not in my plans. Then he further took shots at Canelo Alvarez and saying that Canelo Alvarez is basically a cherry picker and he's only after easy fights because he lost to Bivol. So, he's almost like talking trash like a fighter would talk trash to another fighter without being the fighter, right? So the point I was making in that video, how does this help Terence Crawford? Terence Crawford is about to be 37 years old next month in September. I'm the best in the business, and it's not even close. This is making the Bud Buddies mad because I drive these points home and they make sense and they can't refute it. So they get in the comment section talking about, oh, ego, you're obsessed with Crawford and all this goofy stuff. But like I said, they won't refute what I'm saying in these videos. So my question to you in this condensed version, how does this benefit Terence Crawford, who is 36 years old, going to be 37 years old, when he's looking for the big fights. He's already done what he's done. He has the accolades and the accomplishments and milestones that he has. And then the person you're working with is eliminating options that people might want to see, that Crawford and his team have expressed interest in fighting Tszyu at a point or Canelo at a point. But now these guys are being taken off the table and ruled out because Turkey seems like he's coming in almost like a dictator, and he wants to dictate things. And, he's talking a certain way and then making these statements, and it's just not jiving, especially with the person like Canelo Alvarez. He's like, hold on, I'm Canelo Alvarez. So it's not looking good, because if Crawford wants big fights, you should be looking to secure the biggest fights for Crawford. If you're advising him and you're trying to, you said that Crawford's career wasn't handled in the right way, and you said, basically he wasn't promoted, he wasn't received the way he should be. He's a legend and stuff like that. So wouldn't you want more options for the legend instead of ruling them out? This is just common sense. But to further illustrate my point, because I'm the best in the business, we're going to take a listen to it. This is Alalshikh over the weekend and what he said about Canelo. Roll the clip.
What'd you make of Canelo's most recent comments that he said?
I said before, and this is my opinion, I don't start to talking about these things. He started and he said...
He said he don't talk about it. Canelo started.
He respects me, but he doesn't like what we are doing in boxing.
He says he respects me, but he doesn't like what we're doing in boxing, and then he smiles.
That's why I said what I said.
Yeah.
So he's saying that's what initiated and got him to say what he said.
And I mean it. If he wise guy, he will understand the message. If he wise, if the ego take him, let him in his way.
He said he
I don't really know. I think he was saying if he's wise, he would take. I don't know what he said.
doesn't like the tone in which he was approached, and that it has to be his rules.
I want to tell you something.
Yeah.
I don't go inside the tones between the promoters and himself.
Yeah.
If the promoter deal with him without respect, this is something between him and the promoter, not me. He responds to me. That's why he get the answer.
Yeah.
I don't know what he just said.
But now he's in the audience. Who would you like Tszyu to fight, since you want Ortiz to fight Crawford next?
I will not work with Tszyu.
I will not work with Tszyu. There you have it. So basically, he's explaining the origins of why him and Canelo are funking, why they're beefing, and he's also, in addition to saying he won't work with Canelo, or he has no plans to work with Canelo for Crawford, he's saying he will not work with Tszyu. Again, I'm going to keep driving the same point home, and not one of you is going to do something about it, because just like I know, what I'm saying makes sense. The Bud Buddies, they get all up in arms and be like, oh, ego, and they'll try to distract you and say, oh, Crawford's in your head rent free. Answer the question. We not playing no games. The people that watch my channel are smart enough to understand when somebody is avoiding the question and deflecting. So if you watch this video and you see a response that does not directly answer the question that ego is posing, then you know it's cap. Once again, how is this of any benefit to a guy like Crawford, who should be looking to secure the final big fights of his career and looking for the most money, but then you're working with somebody who is having personal spats and quarrels and beefs with Tszyu and obviously Canelo Alvarez, as I mentioned throughout this video, and he's now, on some dictator stuff. They're not doing it my way. They're responding in a certain way, so I'm going to respond in a certain way. And then now it's just messing up the business, because I highly doubt that Canelo is going to want to work with Turkey if he's taking shots saying you're a cherry picker basically, and you're only after easy fights. And I understand because Beevil whooped you. I mean, you're doing, it's no different than a fighter trash talking. That's like, imagine Edgar Berlanga being an advisor and trying to put together fights, and then he's talking the trash like, I'm gonna knock Canelo out, I'm gonna do this and whoop, 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 and Canelo suck, and you know he's too little, but then he's trying to do business with Canelo. It's a clear conflict of interest. And back to the PBC point, Terence Crawford, he wouldn't have any of these problems if he worked with Al Heyman and PBC. Now, it's funny that Canelo payday, you'll want payday. I know that. He just did an interview with Gilly and Wallow, shout out to them, on their podcast. And he says if he could change things, he would have reversed time. And he said, Golden Boy is cool. I did some cool things with them. But if he had it his way, he feels his career would be even better if he started and stuck with PBC. So coming from the biggest Mexican star in boxing in the last 15 years, right? That's huge. And my question to you is this, which I know the Bud Buddies cannot answer. How come Al Heyman and PBC is good enough for one of the biggest, actually not one, but both of the biggest stars in boxing, Canelo Alvarez and Gervonta Davis, the most notable superstars in this sport, are both working with Premier Boxing Champs, PBC. Crawford wants to go over and do it his way. And he just did it with Crawford Madrimov, Riyadh season. They said the event lost $10 million plus. People didn't seem to love the Eminem show. The card was very bloated and long and drawn out. And then now you got an outstanding beef between basically Crawford's guy who said he's going to steer your career in the right direction, Turki-Alishek, and heavy hitters like Canelo Alvarez and even Tim Tszyu, which would be a big fight. You could do a big fight somewhere in Vegas or in Australia with Tim Tszyu and Crawford. And when I said this last time, somebody said, oh man, what do you mean Crawford doesn't want to fight Tim Tszyu? Now, as I told you guys time and time again, I am the best. My record is perfect. I'm impeccable at my job. The Bud Buddies can get mad and do all this stuff. They're not going to outwork me. They're not going to prove me wrong. They're not going to make more sense. So people saying, oh, Crawford never wanted to fight against Tim Tszyu. Boom. Already had discussions. Superstar firms as Tim Tszyu's next opponent, there's a shock fight offer revealed. So this is showing you from a previous, this is old, but that's a previous report showing that Terence Crawford was interested in fighting Tim Tszyu, which is what I just said. Now, I'm really going to scramble y'all because the Bud Buddies can't with me. Boom. Guess what? Rumor has it that Tim Tszyu, his next fight is going to be a title fight for the IBF. As you guys see on the screen, because I'm the best in the business, and don't you forget it, Tim Tszyu, Talazal, or whatever his name is, he just won a title versus Kukle, and now they've mandated that fight. So you guys don't see the play. The IBF have now officially ordered the super middleweight or super welterweight. So yeah, that's 154. Bakram Murtazaliev to defend his world title against Tim Tszyu. Negotiations between the two parties are now set to commence, and a date for the event, yada, yada, yada. So let me break this down again. Bakram just won that title. You've seen the IBF title draped around. Tim Tszyu, coming off of a loss to Sebastian Fundora, I mean, really, the fight should have been stopped because of the cut on his head, is ranked, so he's going to get this fight. For me, I think Tim Tszyu can beat and will beat Murtalazov or whatever his name is, Bakram, right? Which means he would be the IBF champion, but the Bud Buddies are too stupid to understand where I'm going with this, so let me continue to elaborate. Turkey beefing with Tim Tszyu and Canelo Now, Canelo, that's the fight anybody would want if you can get the opportunity. So I don't have to spend too much time. Terence Crawford has spent a lot of time calling out Canelo, and he's saying he wants it. Canelo's a champion at 168. He has all the belts except for one at this current moment. So that's clearly a in-game mega. It would clearly be Crawford's biggest fight, and he's been calling out Canelo's name. The other guy that Turkey is beefing with has a great chance, in my opinion, to become the IBF titleist and champion if he gets past this fight, which the IBF just mandated. So you guys don't see the play. Terence Crawford for the last several years has been fighting one time a year. Look it up. So Kell Brook, that was his only fight in 2020. Sean Porter, that was his only fight in 2021. After that was whoever, and then David Avocado, and then Errol Spence. All of these fights were the only fight he's had that year. Now he might continue that trend unless he gets another fight in coming off the Madrimov performance. But this is what you guys aren't thinking about. PBC, they work with Tim Tszyu. PBC has worked with Murtal Zaliev, who's the IBF champion, and the fight got mandated. So guess what? This fight will likely be on PBC, right? Maybe even in Australia. I don't know if the champion is willing to fight Tim Tszyu, but they'll figure out those particulars. So Tim Tszyu can very well get into a position where he becomes the IBF champion. So who is Crawford going to fight at 154 if you're creating enemies? Like, I will not work with Tim Tszyu. Okay, so what if Tim Tszyu, you don't see the conflict of interest? What if Tim Tszyu nabs that IBF belt and then Turkey has pretty much dissed Tim Tszyu's team and says, I will not work with them? So now you have Crawford, who just became a champion, beating old boy from Uzbek, Israel Madrimov, and then the unification now becomes harder. Huh? Errol Spence is likely to fight Fundura, another PBC fight. So you have to probably wait for that to play out. So for Crawford to get meaningful fights, he's probably going to have to wait for these PBC fights to first happen. And depending on what happens in that, and then just wait. So again, who does Crawford fight in the meantime? Turkey offered up Virgil Ortiz Jr., but he got dropped twice. I mean, do you guys really want to see that? The best fight out there for Crawford that is within the DAZN universe that makes sense to me is, of course, Jaron Boots Ennis. For some reason, Turkey is not talking about that fight nearly enough, and that's the fight that, to me, would be the biggest fight that Crawford could fight. So I hope you guys understand exactly what I was saying in the last video that I've continued in this video. With Turkey taking shots at Canelo, Turkey taking shots at Tim Tszyu and his team, ruling people out, trying to act like a dictator, I don't see how that benefits the star that you're trying to make into it, or actually the boxer you're trying to make into a star in America at age 37. And then instead of viable options, because the other thing you have to understand, Crawford is a darn good fighter. So he's a really good fighter. If the competition is too low at this point, it's going to be a hard fight to sell because we rate Crawford's skills. So it has to be believable matches and matchups that people want to see, period. So again, that's why I said bad business Bud. He wants to do things his way. And in my opinion, by doing things your way, people think the grass is greener on the other side. You're on the Turkey side now, but you're actually being more alienated from the said fights that you wanted, or fights that to me would be big fights, except for Boots. And then for whatever reason, they're not making the Boots fight, period. People are like, oh, I want to see Crawford versus Jermell Charlo. Again, a PBC guy. Oh, I want to see Crawford versus Erickson Lubin, PBC guy. Tim Tszyu fighting for a title, PBC guy. Sebastian Fundora versus Errol Spence, PBC guys. So this is what I was telling you about. And over time, I think it'll be shown. And again, I don't see the benefit of an advisor advising you, but then he's creating his own small fires and, bickering with other fighters in camps to the point where Terence Crawford hasn't been ruled out for a Canelo fight. Like, they're not beefing, but Turkey and Canelo are beefing. Crawford hasn't had like any negative things to say about Tim Tszyu's team or working with them, but Turkey has. So again, we will see how this plays out, but so far it's not off to a great start because I think Crawford needs all of the options that make sense that he can get. He needs addition right here. Sometimes in life, you need subtraction, right? If you're trying to be successful, get off the grid, subtract the amount of people you call back or spend your time, waste your time on, and subtract people out of your life. Subtract going out to that bar or having long conversations and going back in the DMs with certain people in Instagram. Sometimes subtraction is needed, but also sometimes in life, depending on what it is and what the situation, addition is needed. Sometimes you're doing good, but you need to add more, right? I need to add more discipline. It's never hurt you to add more discipline, add more structure. And in Crawford's case, add more opponents. Crawford is already, there's only a handful of guys at this point that people want to see him fight. And Turkey is doing the opposite and basically ruling out people based on personal back and forth. He just told you. He said, the reason why I responded to Canelo like I did is because Canelo said this, that, and the third. So that's when I opened up and responded to him. But Turkey is not the fighter, right? We know that Turkey as a person, what is he going to do to Canelo? Canelo's a fighter. So like on some like physical confrontation, what are you going to do to Canelo? A professional fighter. So it makes sense when fighters are bickering and beefing with other fighters. Doesn't as much make so much sense when it's the manager or a trainer or, an advisor and they're having their own beefs. That's how I see it. We unpack.